an entrance.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about the new dbt semantic layer. My name is Nick. I'm a director of product working on the semantic layer, and my favorite movie is Dune.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roxy. I'm a product manager with the dbt semantic layer, and my favorite movie is also Dune.
So we have a ton to share today. I'm going to start off, talk a little bit about the semantic layer, why it exists, and how we got here, a little bit of the history at dbt. Then I'm going to kind of zoom out, talk about the vision a little bit. I'm going to hand it over to Roxy to then talk about what we're releasing today. And finally, I'm going to wrap up with just a few things that you can look forward to. So Baron Harkonnen is a business leader. His business is spice. If I already lost you, this is a Dune reference. He asks questions like, how many kilograms of spice were mined last standard year? Beast Rabin is an analyst. And he's a great analyst. He writes SQL. He translates this kind of question into SQL and then into numbers, and the business thrives. So he says 1,530 kilograms of spice. He was wrong. He made a little typo. It's OK. 1,600 kilograms of spice. It happens. Baron Harkonnen is a very forgiving leader. Takes that answer. And the first law of data analytics, which I'm making up right now, is that every answer leads to another question, right? It's a cycle. How many sandworm attacks were there in the last standard week? 18 sandworm attacks. Same thing, translates the question into SQL, returns an answer. But Baron Harkonnen is getting tired of this. It's been a few hours since he asked the question, and he doesn't want to ask another one. It takes too much time, so he just stops asking questions, goes with his gut. He wants to be a data-driven leader, but it's hard sometimes. Meanwhile, Beast Rabin is, he's been pretty busy, and he hasn't actually done all of the work he's supposed to do because he's been writing, ad hoc SQL queries all day long. So this is a workflow that is slow, it's painful, and it's error-prone. And yet it's kind of the way that most organizations work today. So there are a few problems that are worth highlighting here. First, reduced productivity. Analysts are taking queries, they're pulling from a bunch of different things they've written before, they're modifying them slightly, and it takes time to get to the correct answer. Frankly, it's error-prone, right? Every once in a while, you don't update every single parameter in the query, and you return an incorrect number. So there's this loss of trust. Maybe there's two different numbers. Baron Harkonnen sees a dashboard that says 31 kilograms of spice last week, but Beast Rabin just wrote a query that got 38 kilograms. Which one is right? And the worst part is that every once in a while, that wrong number makes it to the end, right? It makes it to a place where it actually influences a decision, and that is poor governance. So Baron Harkonnen doesn't have time. He's got to report to the emperor/board. 38 kilograms it is. We don't know if that's the right number. Could be. 31 kilograms could have been right also. And so this is the point of the dbt semantic layer. We do all of our data transformation in dbt. We build models. We have already accomplished so much. But then we have to go and query all of those data models in all of the different data applications where we actually add value. And the problem is that we need the same number in all of those different places, right? This is a story that you all have probably seen in various places where we talk about the dbt semantic layer. We need consistent definitions. We need improved discoverability. We need cleaner and drier logic. We need the same logic that are in all of those downstream data applications to be in the same place. So I want to talk a little bit about the history of how we got here. In October of 2021, I'm going to take you back on memory lane. Drew wrote an issue called dbt should know about metrics. And this was the beginning. This was a place where we should actually include in the dbt DAG metrics. But you couldn't actually do anything with them, right? So you had to build a way to calculate those metrics. And that's what the dbt metrics package was. Then we came out with a public preview last year at Coalesce, right? So we're clearly on this path to being able to release the dbt semantic layer. And this allowed you, this hosted the semantic layer, and it created APIs for you to then go and query the semantic layer in downstream applications. Then everything got shaken up. dbt Labs acquired Transform, which Roxi and I were both a part of, and I'm really proud to be here. And, entirely new piece of technology, MetricFlow, which was now going to power the dbt semantic layer. So in June, maybe you saw it, we announced a new spec. And this was a part of dbt 1.6. In August, we announced the revamped dbt semantic layer beta. So you can notice here that the pace has really increased. And there's a really big investment behind not just buying a company, but a team of people who are really pushing on trying to get this product into a place where it is actually valuable and ready for you to adopt. You can kind of see that we're moving from exploring to committing. And so today, we're really excited to share that the semantic layer is now generally available. Woo! And it's not just Roxi and I. There are some really amazing people working on this team, and they're walking around, so say hi to them. dbt semantic layer is ready. What does that mean? Well, it means that you should go play around with it. You should test it out. You should connect it to your data applications. But best of all, this means that you have something to do until Dune Part 2 comes out in March. All right, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit. I'm going to talk about the vision. Every once in a while, my parents ask me what I do. It's a really hard question to answer. I'm sure it's difficult for all of you also. But I just tell them semantic layers map data to language. Data is used by computers and analysts. Language is used by humans, right? And so in order to do that, we have implemented in dbt 1.6 some new semantic foundations for how we create that mapping from data to language. So we have a semantic model. And a semantic model includes three main concepts. Entities, which are the nouns, things like a spice harvester. They have dimensions, and they do the measures. Measures, which are verbs, things like sandworm attacks. And they're calculated to the granularities of entities and dimensions. And then dimensions, which are the descriptors, right? On Arrakis. The spice harvester is on Arrakis. And they're kind of like the adjectives, the adverbs, the adnouns, which I learned is a thing. And they belong to entities, and they detail the measures. And so this is important, because what we're doing is kind of leaving the dataverse a little bit. We're actually creating linguistic concepts that matter and that map data to language. But it all really kind of meets like the really valuable kind of contribution when we create metrics, right? That's why we talk so much about metrics. And they are effectively just functions of entities, measures, and dimensions. And there are a bunch of different functions that we can apply here. Simple, cumulative, derived, conversion. There are a bunch of different ways that we can combine these things into the various metrics that we want to be able to consume. But this semantic mapping automates translation from data to language. So some of you have maybe seen this diagram before, the data science hierarchy of needs. Credit for this particular diagram goes to Monica Rogati. But at the foundation, there's data collection, then there's movement and storage, and then there's transformation, right? We're all very familiar with this. That's where dbt sits. But it's important to note that while this work is incredibly important, it is just the foundation. We have not yet added any value to the business, right? We are just preparing to add value. And so when Beast Rabin cracks open his laptop to do some analysis, he is going to try to accomplish all of these different data applications, but he's going to interact with all of the same struggles that he interacts with today. And so we're never actually going to get to that place of adding significant value on the top of this hierarchy of needs. And so the goal of the semantic layer is to push us up and allow us to achieve the top of that hierarchy of needs. Not just AI and deep learning, but metaphorically the top of all of the things that we could do with data. If you think about the cost and the benefit of pursuing every single data application, every single time we open our laptop and try to pursue some new data application, we have to think about the cost. And if we can bring that cost down and keep the benefit in the same place, we have more ROI positive investments in data that we can make. And that is really valuable, and that's something that we should all be striving to do in our organizations. So, starting off with exploratory analytics, executive reporting, operational analytics, I'll even say the forbidden words, self-service. But there are more things that we can do here. Experimentation, embedded analytics. There's caching approaches that could lead to meaningful cost savings. Our finance teams will be very happy about that. And maybe even machine learning. So before I hand it off to Roxi, I'm just going to talk really quickly about the kind of the 6 pillars of our vision and the different pieces of the semantic layer that matter to us. First is expressiveness. You need to be able to express every metric, every single data modeling technique in order for this to succeed. Second is performance. You need to be able to get your data at the speed of thought. So you need to have low latency. You need to have a high performance interface for consumption. Third is it needs to be connected. You need to connect it to all of those data applications, right? That's the place where it actually is going to add value. Fourth, secure and governed. It needs to be compliant with various data access policies that your company has. This is obviously really important for large organizations that manage huge amounts of data where only certain people should have access to some of it. It needs to be context-rich. What I mean by this is that we need to produce metadata. You need to be able to understand everything that's happening in the semantic layer. So that means that you should be able to inspect all of those semantic objects, the entities, the measures, the dimensions. You should be able to understand how people are using them. But maybe in the future, you should also be able to apply an annotation to a metric and have that be able to be broadcast to all of the different places that are consuming it, right? That's a lofty thing that's really not possible in any single BI tool, but it could be possible for us to tie this important metadata to metrics and bring it everywhere. And then lastly, the whole point of dbt, I feel like the meaningful thing that has changed for a lot of us in using it is that it brings the engineering workflows to the analytics engineering profession. And this needs to follow suit. It needs to be an amazing experience to use this. We can't contribute errors to our repos. That's kind of the last piece. So this is a huge vision. There is so much work to do to cover all of these pieces. But we've got a bunch of stuff to talk about today. And so I'm going to hand it over to Roxi.
All right. Hey, everyone. So Nick and I are really excited about what the future of the semantic layer holds. But for this part of the talk, like Nick said, we're actually going to zoom in a little bit, talk about what you can do with the semantic layer today, show some demos, and talk about specific features. And if you have any questions or want to dig deeper, you can find Nick and I, because we'll be here all week. But first, a quick reminder about what the theme of this talk is, because it's been pretty subtle, right? The metrics must flow as the spice must flow. I really felt that this version of this meme was very appropriate for our product MetricFlow. Probably didn't need to explain that. OK, let's move on. So what can you do with the semantic layer today? First, you can define your semantic objects on top of dbt models. Now, this may seem obvious, but I'm bringing this up for 2 reasons. The first is that this is one of the key foundational integration pieces between our products post-acquisition, bringing in the best of what MetricFlow had to offer with the best of what dbt had to offer. And the second reason I'm bringing this up is because this, as you can see here, I have a semantic model, which is a new concept we introduced, and it's referencing a dbt model here. And this concept of semantic models is what allows us to enable joins. You may have heard Luis talk about join support today, and I'm going to give another example here. This is probably one of the most compelling features of the dbt semantic layer. And to explain it, I'm going to use an example of two tables here. As you can see, one is called spice, and it has the spice harvested, of course, and the other is noble house. For those of you that have watched the movies or read the books, you know about the noble houses of Dune. As you can see, these tables have a foreign and primary key reference. So if I was in a data platform, I could write a join query to actually get attributes from both of these tables. But for the semantic layer, all you have to do is actually tell it about these relationships when you're defining your semantic models. So in the spice semantic model, I would indicate that I have a foreign key reference of noble house ID. And similarly, in the noble house semantic model, I would reference the primary key. With this information, and with this information only, when a user is requesting a metric built off of the spice semantic model and maybe wants to join onto a dimension from noble house, let's say like house leader or house name, then MetricFlow can actually perform the join dynamically under the hood at query time. So what does this actually mean for you? Well, you don't have to spend any time or money pre-aggregating these large data sets or cubes in your data warehouse. You can instead rely on the dynamic nature of the semantic layer, where queries and metrics are only computed when they're requested. Additionally, this is great for reusability, because you're only defining these relationships once, and it makes your code very dry, or do not repeat yourself. And lastly, this feature really enables great discoverability. Your end users in your downstream tools may or may not know what things they can access and what information and questions they can answer. But because we can generate what we call a semantic graph at query time, you're able to see all the things that you can query in the scope of your data, which is really exciting. All right, next, we have the ability to create complex metrics. I'm going to use the example of a cumulative metric of weekly active sandworms, very important for making sure that people can harvest spice without getting attacked. So as you can see, this is a cumulative metric. For any of you, actually maybe a show of hands, has anybody had to write the SQL for a weekly active or a monthly active metric? It's like kind of a little bit tricky, right? It's not as straightforward as it seems. We've been there. So we built an interface to make this a little bit easier. You can let MetricFlow handle the complexity for you and define your metrics with just a couple lines of code. All right, moving on more to the ecosystem here. One of our biggest strategies is really to build interfaces that people can develop and consume metrics wherever they are. So we have a GraphQL API and a JDBC API that's based off of Apache Aeroflight SQL. Also related to the ecosystem, we have support for additional data platforms. You may remember the original release of the semantic layer supported Snowflake. We now support BigQuery, Redshift, and most recently Databricks. Just a quick shout out to their team for turning around the adapter so quickly. Thank you. And lastly, related to the data platform, MetricFlow's core functionality is generating SQL. And we can generate optimized SQL for your specific data warehouse. It's also very clean and legible, and we can return it to you. We don't want to be a black box. So if you're an analyst, just like we're trying to build trust in data for your organization, we want you to also have trust in the data that the semantic layer is generating. All right, that was a very fast crash course into some of the key highlights and features. Obviously, if you want to dig deeper, have questions, we'll stick around after, and you can also find us around. Now we're actually going to pivot to talk about some of the integrations and the ecosystem and give you some demos. But first, friendly reminder, why tracking weekly active sandworms is important. You definitely don't want to get into the situation. I think that's Timothée Chalamet. I don't know. Hopefully he's OK. OK, these are the integrations that we're actually going to demo here for you today. And some of these may look familiar, like Hex and Mode. We've released those over the last couple of months. The teams have released those. And we've also released Google Sheets and Tableau just this week, as well as a partner integration of Lightdash, which also released this week. So we'll give you a quick tour of all of these. And then I'm also going to do it under the theme of no matter where you are in the Duniverse or the data stack, the number you query is going to be the same. So you'll actually see me querying the same metric in all of these tools. Also, I did say Duniverse, not universe, in case you thought you needed to get your hearing checked. All right. I'm actually going to start with Tableau. We're really excited about this integration. We released a live integration, which is a custom connector. And let's just show you how it works really quickly. So as you can see, I'm interacting with the connector here. It's called dbt Semantic Layer by dbt Labs. I authenticate with my dbt Cloud credentials. And the rest of this workflow should deliberately feel very similar if you're familiar with Tableau. You have your data source. You can interact with sheets. And your measures here are actually your metrics that you've defined. And this is dynamically querying the semantic layer as you're dragging and dropping. So I'm getting my spice tons. I'm actually going to slice it by time. And I'll also, just for purposes of showing a join, group by the noble house. And so you can see, for those of you that are Dune fans, we're going to actually filter down to House Atreides, Harkonnen, and for those of you that read the books, Skenaz. But anyways, this should look very familiar with the added benefit that the data you're getting is from the semantic layer, so you're going to feel very comfortable and confident navigating this and sharing insights with the rest of your team. So here I'm just creating a dashboard, and I'll feel, because the data is coming from the semantic layer, I'll know that this is something that I can share with others. So check this out. You can download the connector on our documentation site and use it with Tableau Desktop. All right, moving on to a more modern tool in the data stack, we have Hex. For those of you that know Hex, Hex is a really great collaborative analytics platform, and they built an integration with the revamped dbt Semantic Layer. Let's show you what it does. So the heart of the integration is a custom dbt Semantic Layer widget here, which you can see you have all your metrics, the definitions of them. You can interact with them, whether you can write SQL or if you're non-technical. You can filter by time, group by your dimensions here, get your data set. And one thing that we really like about Hex is that you can build these custom things in notebooks and then publish them to really beautiful interactive web applications. Like this chart is something that I could publish to the rest of my organization. Also, if you're a more technical user that prefers SQL, you could also interact with the Hex integration just using our JDBC interface, which is great. You have something for every user. And again, feeling confident in empowering end users to navigate this on their own. All right, next up we have Mode. Mode is also a great analytics tool and a great partner of ours. And some of you also may know that they are now part of ThoughtSpot. They built an integration directly with our JDBC interface, so you interact with it much like the reports. You can build your queries, and this is really geared towards analysts who are looking to empower their end users to query and get some answers on their own, jump off and explore. As you can see, I'm running a very similar query with spice tons. I can obviously create charts and build visualizations, and again, feel very confident that I'm empowering non-technical users to answer their questions. All right, the next partner integration we're going to highlight here is Lightdash. So Lightdash released their integration this week, and they are actually a tool that's built specifically around your DBT projects. So as you can see, they've built this custom semantic layer UI, and you can interact with it by clicking your metrics and dimensions, building your charts, interacting with it, and again, really feeling confident that what you're sharing here is accurate and blessed. I also it's not open at the bottom, but as you can see, there's actually a SQL panel, and that actually will give you the semantic layer generated SQL if you're interested. All right, last but not least, Google Sheets. We all love spreadsheets, even if we say we don't. We just released an integration. You can actually find us on the marketplace. We have a custom menu you can interact with, as you can see on the right-hand side. And really, you're just building a query against a semantic layer, returning your data in a spreadsheet, and you're able to share that. Spreadsheets are great, but they're very accessible to everybody. So there's a lot of different data that could be floating around. But with this integration, you know that everyone's querying the same number, which is really valuable. So please check this out. You can actually download it if you just search in your extensions, or there's a link to it in our documentation as well, if you want to check it out. All right, it may have been hard to see when I was looking at a time series and all of these tools, but I wanted to, once again, take us back to the point of consistency, which is No matter where you are in the tools, your teams are going to want to consume data differently. But with the semantic layer, you can be confident that the number is the same. So here I've just aggregated the spice tons and took a picture of each of these tools' single value charts. All right, I just want to quickly say thank you to all these folks that have built integrations. There's a couple more on here that you did not see demos of. Delphi, Clipfolio, and Push AI. Thank you to those folks as well. Some of them are here, so you should find them and check out their integration. And I think we're going to wrap up with a roadmap now.
Yeah. Right. I'm really excited about all of that. The Google Sheets one, when I first saw it, we worked on something kind of similar at Transform, and when I first saw it, I just realized, yeah, we talk about self-service, and we talk about the ability to actually do that, but that's kind of it. Like that, I mean, there's a lot we could do to make it cooler, but that kind of interface on top of Google Sheets really enables, I think, business users to come in and ask questions and have this kind of pre-filled set of metrics and dimensions. And on the other end is 100 lines of SQL, maybe more. That's correct. It's accurate. It returns the right number. That's really powerful. So there's a lot more to do. This is the very beginning. This is the place where we say, we really believe that this is ready to adopt. But our team is obviously really invested in making this the best semantic layer that you could adopt in the long term. And so one of the things that we're working on right now is caching. Caching is a really powerful feature. It has the ability to solve that pillar of performance, to be able to return metrics to you in under a second. It has the ability to potentially save a ton on all of the various ad hoc queries that are coming in from different places. And we really believe that this should happen on the data platform. The ability to write tables back to the data platform and then query from there dramatically simplifies that governance story. Because the data is ultimately in the place where you're putting it already. And that's a really powerful concept. Next up is exports and saved queries, which I think is somewhat related to caching. Exports and saved queries basically allow you to say, that exact query that I went and formed in Google Sheets, I want to save that. I want that to be version controlled too. And I want to be able to reference it in a bunch of different places and get back the exact same 7 columns with the exact same data in all of those different places. And then to take that a little further, with exports, I actually want to be able to save that data set back to the platform. And then maybe query it in a bunch of different ways, which solves the problem of, hey, I don't actually have an integration with the tool that I use, and maybe we could build an integration, and we should in the long term, but it solves the problem in the short term because the data set is sitting in the data platform, and you can always just pull it from a table that you built. And so really excited about that. That's something that we're actively working on right now. More advanced permissions and security capabilities. You need to be able to apply access controls onto these various semantic layer concepts. And even beyond that, I mean, this can start at a very basic level. But beyond that, I think there's an amazing potential in the long term where maybe I want to expose revenue to my users. I want to expose revenue by store. But when the granularity gets to revenue by user, I don't want to expose that. And so you could actually imagine a set of access controls that are more powerful than what we have access today by using the semantic layer. Tons of integrations, like totally get that this has to be connected to all of the different platforms that you want to use. And so we're investing a ton in integrations, both by enabling partners to build integrations and then working with them to just improve the workflows of how they would go about building that by improving our APIs. Lastly, even more metric types. You have to be able to define 100% of your metrics, the ones that you care about measuring, in the semantic layer. And so right now we're working really hard on conversion metrics. If you've ever asked like 5 data analysts to define the same conversion metric, you will absolutely get 4, maybe 5 different numbers back. It is really hard to define a conversion metric. And so I think that our time is up. I really appreciate you all coming to learn about the new dbt semantic layer. Roxi and I are going to be sitting right here until we can't
Kicked
answer
out.
questions anymore. But we're going to be around. We really want to be able to answer every question that everyone has in here. There are a bunch of people from the Semantic Layer team, and they're going to join us. So thank you all so much. Any questions, Dune lore or Semantic Layer, we're right here.